Hello, welcome to iansstudio. In this video I'm going to take you through the editing steps on this image of Santa Maria on the island of Sal in Cabo Verde. And particularly I'm going to look at a new technique for making the sky look bluer. Hello, I'm Ian Butterfield. A few weeks ago I uploaded a travel log of my visit to the town of Santa Maria on the island of Sal, Cabo Verde. And in there I showed some images of the beach area. And when I was preparing them, I used a different technique for making the sky look bluer than I would normally do. And I want to share that technique with you. In fact, rather than just concentrating on that one technique, let's go through the whole editing process involved with this particular image. So let's start by looking at the Exif data on this. So I'm just going to go over to the library module in loop view. So that's E on the keyboard, and we can look at the Exif data on here. And what you can see is I was shooting at ISO 100. It was a bright location. The exposure was 1/640th of a second at f8. I'm shooting at f8 whenever I can, where depth of field's not important because that's where the lens is at its sharpest. I was using the wide angle end of my 24-105 lens on here. And if I zoom in, we should be able to check that everything is nicely in focus, and it appears to be. So that's the image I'm working with. There are a few problems with it, which we're going to deal with in the develop module. So let's go over there. D for develop takes us over to the develop module. I'm going to lose the left-hand bar because I don't need it for this. And the first thing that is very obvious about this image is you can see the dark corners. We've got a vignetting that's caused by the lens. So this is one of those occasions where it's critically important to apply the lens corrections. So let's come down to lens corrections on the toolbar, and we select enable profile corrections. And you can see the huge difference that that's made. It's affected the barrel distortion. I'm just going to toggle that on and off, and I'll show you something. If you look down here, the bottom left, there's a little bit of the jetty I'm standing on there, and when I do the correction, you'll see that that vanishes on there, and the darker corners get less dark, so that the image is much more even across it. I don't think there's any chromatic aberration on here that I can see, but maybe a very slight amount, but nothing major. But I'm going to enable the remove chromatic aberration anyway, so that if it has detected any, it can get rid of it. So that's the first stage. Next, let's look at the basic adjustments. I'll zoom out so we can see the whole image. And the first thing I want to do is set an appropriate white balance. Now, if we look at the people on the beach, you can actually see there are shadows. It was a sunny-ish day, but if I set it to daylight on here, you see it becomes a very cold image. And I like my images to be a little bit warmer than that, so I'm actually going to set cloudy. It wasn't cloudy, but I prefer the warmth that gives to the beach and to the water. So I'm going with that. Next, I'm looking at the exposure, and looking at the histogram, I've got a little bit of scope just to brighten things up a little bit on there. We're not far off, maybe a third, 2/3 of a stop, 3/4 of a stop, something like that. It will cope with. So something round about that sort of area. So that's brightened that part of the image up, but I just want to make sure we don't lose detail in the highlights. on there. So I'm just going to bring the highlights right down with it, because I'm trying to just make sure it, I can actually take it all away. It doesn't make a huge, notice that. It just brings back the detail a little bit more on the beach for it. The shadows, maybe bring the shadows up a fraction to 40, 48, something like that. And the contrast, do I want to take the contrast down a little bit on here? Let's see what happens if I take it down. It becomes a bit more foggy. I don't think I do. I think I'm just going to leave the contrast as it is on here. Then the clarity, that mid-tone contrast. So let's bring that up to 50-ish. That's brought back a little bit more of the detail in there. And the vibrance, let's make it a bit more of a vibrant image. So let's bring up 51, something like that. 50 is, so we've got the sort of colour in the in there. It's looking much more like that bright African sunshine that we want. But looking at the sky, it's not as deep a blue as I would like. Now, when one of the classic techniques with for darkening skies is to use the blue slider, but because we've got so much sea in there, I don't want the sea to be affected. I just want to affect the sky. So I'm going to do this by using a graduated filter, and that's the rectangle tool here, or M on the keyboard. So I'm going to select that, and as ever I'm going to double click on the word effect to reset everything. Now for this I'm going to do something slightly differently than normal. I'm going to create the filter and then do the adjustments. So I want everything in the sky to be affected and nothing in the sea. So if I start here, hold the shift key down, this will keep it horizontal, I can put in my my graduated filter like so. I'm just going to adjust that up just fractionally, so it's about there. And we can see with the overlay mask on here which area is affected. So we've got all the sky is affected, the sea isn't, a little bit down in there. So I can just push that up slightly. And I think something like that is probably where I want. Take the overlay mask off. Now, of course, that's made no difference at all because we've got none of the sliders over here are actually doing anything. But what I'm going to use is I'm going to work primarily with the dehaze slider. The dehaze slider is designed to cut through mist, and this is a fairly hazy sort of scene, but I don't want it in there. And when it does cut through it, it tends to add a bit of blue to it. So if I use the dehaze slider and move that up, you can see that sky is now cutting through, and you see how the blue parts are being more affected and that cloud's starting to stand out. Now I might want that a little bit more saturated, so I can use the saturation slider just to add a bit more colour to that. So low 20s, that sort of area with it, to something like that. So that's the effect that it's had. Now what I do need to just be careful of is what the effect is on the building. So I'm just going to toggle this on and off so I can just see what's been affected and what hasn't. And it's affected the buildings just slightly. So I'm just going to move this up a little bit more so that the effect's not quite as much on the buildings. So about there. And that, I think, now if I toggle on and off so we can see the difference, yeah, it's just the sky that's been affected on there, and it's given a really nice look to that sky, and it's now represented more as I remember that scene. Right, there's one final thing I want to do with this image before I finish. I like the beach scene, but this lone child over here is drawing my eye. Let's close down the graduated filter, and I'm just going to zoom in on the small child there. I want to get rid of him, so I'm going to show how I'm doing that. It's really, really easy, but there are just a couple of things to be aware of with it. Q gives the spot, the spot heal brush, spot removal brush over here, and I'm going to use the mouse just to adjust the size of this. Now, you might think the best way to do it is just to go like that, and it's not done a bad job. The only problem is we've left a little bit of the reflection there, so Control Z to undo that, and instead I'm going to make the brush much smaller. I want to make sure it covers the child. I also don't want a huge feather on it because then we've got a large area. I'm just going to work with a feather that's reasonable, say, let's see, about 32, something like that, in the 30s area. Around about there, that'll do nicely. And that's enough to cover him. It's enough of a feather for it to work, which means now I can cover the child and just paint vertically down to cover the reflection as well. Now let's see where it manages to find the little bit of sea from. And actually it's done a really good job. It's found it from over here. The little bit of sea matches up over there. So if I come out of this tool and we can see it without the boundaries, I think you'd be hard pressed to know that there was ever a child in that scene at all. So let's just zoom out, and I think that's a better version of the scene to the one we had earlier. So that's my edits complete on there. Hope you found that helpful. The takeaways from it are that technique for making the sky bluer using a graduated filter, but not using the colour on there to do it, but using the dehaze tool and adding a little bit of saturation in there, and a little bit of a technique with removing the child from the image as well. So those are the main takeaways from it. So thanks for watching, and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button down here so you'll get notified of future videos. Up here is a playlist of videos similar to this one, and here's one specific video that I think you will like, whereas down here is one that YouTube thinks you'll like. Until next time, keep making great photos. Bye for now.